Welcome to edusati.com, your partner in education. In this session, we'll discuss certain questions related to critical reasoning. Before we move further, I'll just brief you up what exactly is critical reasoning. Critical reasoning is the concept where the questions paper setter checks your ability to analyze and interpret correctly any given argument. And the difference between an argument and a fact is that argument is always backed up by personal opinions or conclusions or interpretations. A better understanding that you can develop related to critical reasoning would be if you've already watched the video related to the basics of critical reasoning. If not, I'd recommend that please go and first of all watch the video of basics of critical reasoning as well as the videos related to statement assumptions and statement conclusions. If none, you'll be much more comfortable interpreting the questions and finding the answers more correctly. So let us start our discussion about the certain questions that relate to critical reasoning with this very first question. Please pause the video for a second, take 40 to 45 seconds and try and answer this question. Now, if you've read this question nicely, the basic argument that this question is providing is that it is saying that this county is facing a problem that people are dumping their trash out in the in the general parklands, right? So what the people are doing that they are putting their trash or they're throwing or dumping their trash in the parkland. And now, due to this problem, which is the problem, the government or the in charge or the authorities have decided to infuse or to enforce a specific sort of a tax or a fee, right? A household fee charge. They're going to charge a fee like for each pound of a trash. So that is, which means that if you're throwing 1 pound of pound of trash on the parkland, you'll be paying certain amount of money to throw that tax, right? And the question asks that which of the following is an assumption made in drawing the conclusion above. Now, what is the assumption related to the conclusion? First of all, let us understand what exactly is the conclusion that we are talking about. The conclusion that we talk about here is that what did the government or the in charge or the authorities think before deciding upon that we'll infuse this tax or this fee for throwing the this trash. That is, what was their agenda? What did they think that made them to put this fee and to actually charge the people a particular amount of a fee so as they were able to throw their garbage or dispose of their trash in the parklands. So what was the basic assumption? So let us discuss these options one by one. The first option says residents will reduce the amount of trash that they put for collection by reducing the number of products they buy. Okay, now this part of this sentence, right, might sound correct, but here we cannot say that because they are being charged for throwing the garbage, they'll stop buying the products. So this point will be rejected based on the fact that it is drawing an invalid assumption. It is saying that people will stop buying the product, which is a little vague, which is incorrect. Let's discuss the second point. It says the collection fee will not significantly affect the purchasing power. Now, we are not concerning ourselves to the purchasing power. It is not related here. Purchasing power is the ability of like how much can you spend on a particular item, right? So, if can you buy anything for £100 conveniently, or can you buy something that costs only £50 conveniently? So that is what purchasing power vaguely means. But putting a fee over or a tax over something does not question your purchasing power, right? So this point will also be rejected. We are not concerning about the purchasing power. The collection fee will not induce residents to dump their trash in parklands illegally. That is because they'll have to pay a certain amount of fee so to throw certain trash. This might make them think that since they have to pay a fee, let's not put the trash illegally in the parklands. It's okay. We'll put it at the proper places. So this might sound to be a correct answer. So we'll keep it under consideration. Let's go to the point number D. It says the beauty of the county parkland is an important issue. It's not only about the beauty of the parkland, it's also about cleanliness, right? So we'll reject this point because it's just concerning itself to a very niche area, that is the beauty. There are many other aspects related to this that may be related to putting or reducing a fee as well, right? Last point, it says landfill outside the county borders. Now we are just concerned about the parklands, right? And here we are violating the scale. We are now moving outside the county borders. We cannot say that are they good dumping sites or are they bad dumping sites, right? We are unaware about that thing. We are just concerned about the parkland in the county borders. So again, I'll reject this option and I'm only left with option number C. So my correct answer becomes option number C. So this question was very simple. If you understood what is the basic argument, you'll be able to tell the answer very, very nicely. Let's take another example. Again, please pause the video and try and interpret the answer. Now, the question that is asked here is that which of the following must be true on the basis of the statement in the advertisement above, right? Now, here the basic argument is that Megacorp, these people, this organization is always, it's motivated to meet the expectations of its customers, and this is the basic argument, right? And herein it is explaining what forms the basic context of its goal or its objective. The context is meeting the quality. And now he asks you what are the bases of the statement. The statement is that they are basically focused on the uh, meeting the customer expectations, right? So let us discuss these. The first is Megacorp's competitors will succeed in attracting customers only if the competitors adopt the Megacorp's goals as their own. Okay, we are only concerned about Megacorp, and here we violate the scale. Since we violate the scale, now we are moving beyond what is given to us, so we will reject this option. We are not concerned about competitors. Next, a company that does not correctly anticipate the expectations of the customers certainly to fail in advancing the quality of their products. Now, this may sound correct, but the entire argument is focused on Megacorp only. This very organization only, but herein we are passing a very general statement. Since we are just passing a general statement, regard this option as incorrect. Why? Because we can always move from being general to being specific, but we cannot go the other way. We cannot generalize something from a specific example. And here we are concerned only with Megacorp, and we cannot take its example and generalize it for any and every organization. So we'll reject this because it again violates the scale. Next, Megacorp's goal is possible to meet only if continuing advances in product quality is possible. Now, this may sound correct. It is something that's related. It says, because even in the argument, it said that the companies fail to build the brand loyalty of the customers because they are unable to maintain the quality. So, there is a relationship between quality and loyalty of the customer. So I will keep this into the consideration. Let's move to the D point. It says if the company becomes satisfied with the quality of its product, then the quality of its product will decline. It is very vague. It is violating this very fact that's written in the argument. The argument says that quality has to be maintained to maintain the brand loyalty or to maintain the customer base, but herein it's relating the quality of the product to the satisfaction of the company and not the customers. That the company will be contented, yes, I have done something good, but here we are concerned about the satisfaction of the customers. So it is relating two different things which are not mentioned in the argument. So again, I'll regard this as an incorrect option. E. Megacorpus customers are currently satisfied. We cannot comment on this. That's nothing that's mentioned here. Right? So again, we'll regard this as an incorrect option. So only thing that we're left is this option number C. So my answer becomes point number C. Again, a very simple question if you've understood the argument very nicely. Let's take the third question. Please, again, pause the video and try and answer this question. Now, if you're able to analyze this argument correctly, you'll be able to find what is the argument exactly. The argument is that should we replace the current use of tankers with the other counterpart, that is use of the offshore operations? Should we replace the use of tankers for the movement of oil with the offshore operations, so as they are used now to basically move the to transport the oil, right? This is the basic argument, right? And he says that we must invest. So the in the opinion of the author, he says yes, we must replace it. And the question that is asked to you is that how can you negate this opinion of this author? The author says yes, we must basically start using offshore operations rather than the tanker ones, right? We must replace the tanker operations with the offshore operations for the movement of oil. How can you negate this thing? So how can you weaken his opinion? So let us analyze all these options. The first says tankers can easily be redesigned so that their use entails less risk of oil spill. This is something that can weaken the argument. So we'll keep this under consideration. That yes, you can you can easily redesign the tanker, so you need not to invest in the offshore operation. You can just redesign the existing tanker, and you can again have the and you can use them conveniently again, right? So let us move to the next option. We'll analyze the other ones as well. B says oil spills caused by tankers have generally been more serious, that the spill due to tanker is more serious than that caused by the offshore operations. So it is basically strengthening his opinion that yes, that yes, we must replace the use of tankers by offshore operations. Since it is strengthening and not negating, I'll regard this as an incorrect option. C says the impact of offshore operations on the environment can be controlled by careful management. Here he says that we must, even there might be some impact of the offshore operations as well, but it is much less than that by the risk that the tankers pose, right? And herein he's saying this: the impact of the offshore operations can be controlled as well. So this is neither strengthening nor weakening, but it is going in favor of the use of offshore operations. That even if there are certain spills, they may be managed conveniently. Since it is going in favor of offshore operations, I regard this as an incorrect option again. Let's go for the the fourth one. Offshore operations usually damage the ocean floor, but tankers rarely cause such damage. Herein, we are talking about oil spill, and herein it is talking about the damage to the ocean floor. It is basically violating the scope itself, right? It may sound correct, but it is violating the scope. We are concerned about oil spill and its the impact, and how can we deal with the oil spill, the wastage due to this oil spill. And herein we are now talking about the ocean floor. It is violating the scope. Since it is changing its context, it is violating the scope. We'll again regard this as an incorrect option. Fifth option says importing oil or tankers is currently less expensive. Again, it is violating the scope. We are not concerned about money and the expenses. We are just concerned about should we do it or should we not. Since it is violating the scope again, I'll again regard this as an incorrect option. And the one that I'm left with is my answer, which is option number A. So again, very convenient, very simple question if you've understood the argument very nicely. As and when you can just analyze that. If you understood the argument nicely, you'll be very, very easily find the answer, right? You'll find the answer very nicely. So let's move to the next question. Again, please pause the video and try and find the answer. Now, basically, the argument says that the breakfast cereals are, they are provided with synthetic or not synthetic, if not synthetic, with additional vitamin supplements, right? And he's saying that even though we can have those breakfast cereals, but a balanced and a proper diet, a proper breakfast is a better source of vitamins. So, in the opinion of the author of the question paper setter or the person who's written the statement, he says having breakfast, a proper, well nutrition breakfast, is much more better than having a, a, a breakfast cereal with additional vitamin supplements. So, he's comparing these two and he says we must have this. So, this is the argument. And we are asked to support the argument. That is, we are asked that which of the following five will basically explain or will basically support the statement that yes, we must have a well balanced breakfast rather than eating a breakfast cereal. So let's analyze each of the alternatives. The first is in many foods, the natural combination of vitamins with other nutrients make those vitamins more usable. That the already vitamins, when we eat a balanced nutrition, they boost up, their effect boosts up, so we get better results than having them in the form of a breakfast cereal. So this is something that goes in favor, so we'll keep this under consideration. Let's discuss the second part. People who regularly eat breakfast cereal fortified with vitamin supplements sometimes neglect to eat the food. This is very vague. It is saying that it is basically discussing the, the perception or the preference of the people, that they, if they are eating the breakfast cereal, they'll be neglecting the food. If they're eating the food, they'll be neglecting breakfast. So it is something that's not even related here, so we'll regard this as an incorrect option. C. Foods often must be fortified with vitamin supplements because naturally occurring vitamins are removed during processing. Now it says if I'm having breakfast, although I'll get vitamins, but they'll be removed easily. So I'll have to have vitamin enriched breakfast cereal, which is basically strengthening the use of breakfast cereal and not eating the breakfast. So this is not strengthening our argument, it is weakening it. So we'll neglect it as the incorrect option. D says unprocessed cereal are naturally high in several of the vitamins that are usually added to fortified breakfast cereal. So it says that eating the cereal, unprocessed cereals have higher number of vitamins than the processed cereals. But our consideration is the comparison of a well balanced breakfast and breakfast cereal, and not the comparison of unprocessed cereal and processed cereal. So it is violating the scope. Herein we are comparing processed and unprocessed cereal, and herein we are comparing breakfast with breakfast cereal. So we'll neglect this as well. We'll regard this as an incorrect option again. The last point says cereal containing vitamin supplements are no harder to digest than similar cereals without added vitamins. Again, we are comparing processed and unprocessed and not breakfast with breakfast cereal. So again, we'll regard this as an incorrect option, and my answer becomes option number A. Let's take another example. This is a very good question. Please pause this video again and try and answer this question. It's a very easy question. Now, the basic argument is that the physician has said that although this medicine, melatonin, has shown promising effects on sleep disorder, but I'll still not recommend it because of its long-term side effects or something like that. And the patient says that you've never been, you've never been concerned about the side effects because you've already given so many medicines that have side effects. So I'll not go by this explanation. I'm not satisfied with this explanation that you're not recommending me this medicine because of its side effect. And he's asking you that where is the patient failing to analyze the argument given by the physician, that where is the patient flawed in interpreting the physician's argument, that whatever the physician has said, where is he not able to interpret it correctly, right? So let us find where is he basically flawed. The first one says that the side effect of synthetic melatonin might be different from those of naturally produced melatonin. We are not concerned about the side effects of synthetic and naturally. He's just saying the hormone melatonin. He's not concerned about its synthetic or like, even though it might sound yes, but we are not unaware about we are unaware about the naturally produced melatonin. Might be that synthetic melatonin also has those many side effects as many are given by the naturally produced melatonin. So basically, this is violating the scale. So I'll neglect it as the incorrect option. Next, it is possible that the physician does not believe that melatonin has been conclusively shown to be effective. Now, the first line of the physician says the hormone melatonin has shown promise as a medication, which means that he is very much, okay with the use of melatonin. He's very much convinced with the use of melatonin. He's not against the use of melatonin. He's just against because he's not aware about its long-term side effects. So he'll not recommend it. But he's not. It is not that he's not very much convinced with the use of melatonin. So this is something contradicting the physician's argument. So we'll neglect this as an incorrect option. Next, sleep disorders, if untreated, might lead to serious medical problems. Herein, we are concerned about the use of melatonin and not sleep disorders. So we'll regard this as an incorrect option again. D says the side effect of the medication can take some time to manifest themselves. Okay, fine, this might sound nice, this might sound okay, but we are not concerned about the time, the time scale or the time chronology or anything that relates to time. And moreover, the physician says because the long-term side effects of the melatonin. So he is not very much, he's aware of that there may be side effects in the long term as well. So again, we'll regard this as an incorrect option. Fifth says known risks can be weighed against known benefits, but unknown risks cannot. Herein, the physician says because the long-term effects of the synthetic melatonin are unknown, that is, he's unaware what are the what would be the long-term side effects, right? So that means he's unaware about what are the side effects and not about what are they serious or are they not, right? Since he's unaware about what are the side effects, so that is the reason he's not recommending the medicine. So this is something that is a correct explanation, right? So my answer would be E instead of any other of the options. I'll explain this question to you again. The physician says that I'm not recommending you this very medicine because I am unaware about its long-term side effects, right? Since I am unaware about the long-term side effects, I'll not recommend this. And the patient thinks that he is unaware about this. He's saying that I am concerned about the side effects. Whereas the physician says that I am not concerned about the side effects, but I'm just not aware that what would be the side effects. So that is the reason I'm not basically giving you this medicine. I'm not prescribing you this medicine. So this is what the question is. And this is where the patient is flawed in his argument. Let's move to the next question. Again, please pause the video and try and find out the answer. Now that you've understood the question nicely, we'll discuss about what exactly is the argument. Here in this statement, it is basically discussing about the style of writing, and it is also giving you certain examples about different ethnic backgrounds. The first bold-faced, it is telling you about the style of the writing in the Greek inscriptions, and the second one, it is talking about the Phoenician inscriptions, right? About the Phoenician style of writing. Although it says that the Phoenicians were not concerned about the direction of writing, but their pioneer or the maiden inscriptions are from right to left. And about Greeks, it is saying it may run from right to left and left to right. So in the entire passage, we are just discussing about the style of writings and and to justify it, it is talking about the certain ethnic background and about their style of writing. So it is a concept the concept is style of writing, and there are certain examples from where this concept has been discussed. So out of all these options, I'd say that option number D is the correct relation between the bold faces that the bold face play in this entire statement. It is certain argument that has been established, which is the style of writing. And these two bold faces are basically providing an evidence to support the position that yes, the Greeks were not concerned; their writing was right to left or left to right, and even the Phoenicians, they used to write from right to left. So it's a concept, and these two are basically an example or the support systems to the given statement, right? Let us take another example. The Heron, there's a question. Please pause the video again and try and find the answer. Now, if you've read the question, it is giving you a scenario. The scenario says that the government of Renagia, it's basically has increased the pension the pension that's given to the people of the age of 65 or above by 20%. And the result is contradictory herein the people are now even more financially weak. And the related information is that the increase in the inflation rate has basically increased less than 5%. Now, if there is an increase in the pension and the inflation rate has decreased, the result that must have happened would have been that the people who are receiving the pension must be more financially sound, right? But what is the paradox? That now they have become less, now they are not more financially sound, now they are worsening up, right? So this is something that is the actual result, but the expected result was that they must they must be in a better financial position. And the question asks you what could be the reason or what could be true fact that explains this paradox, that explains that why is that now the people are even more worse in their financial conditions, given that in spite of the facts that there is an increase in the pension and decrease in the inflation rate. So let us analyze all these options. The first option says that the majority of senior citizens whose financial position has not improved rely entirely on the government pension for their income. So this is basically questioning the inflow or the income of the people. That the people who are receiving the pension, they are just getting the money, right, from the pension only, right, and they are not having any other source of income. But why are we concerned about the other sources of income? If the government has increased the amount of the pension that is being given to the people, the beneficiaries, this must be basically to benefit the people. So the beneficiaries must be the basic plan is that the beneficiary must depend only on the pensions, right? So we are not concerned about the inflow from the other sources. If there is an increase in the pension, the increase must the assumption that has been made or the reason for the increase must be that to make the people more financially sound, even if they are getting the money only from the pension, right? So this is an incorrect argument or an incorrect option. Second, the Runadian banking system is so inefficient that the cashing of a pension check can take as much as 3 weeks. But even then, we are talking about 2 years, right? And we cannot compare it 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks will not justify the financial status or the financial position. And moreover, we cannot question the system of banking here, right? If there is an increase in pension and inflation rate has decreased, even after a delay of 3 weeks, the people must get a little better in their financial aspects, right? So this is a weak argument again. Next, the prices of the goods and services that meet the special needs of the many senior citizens have increased at much higher rate than the rate of inflation. This means that the rate of increase in prices is superficially high And the rate of inflation that has been stated is comparatively low. That is, even if the inflation is below 5%, but the rate of the rates of the general commodities that we need on in our daily chores is so high that the increase in the pension is not able to fulfill it, and the people are unable to manage their expenses. So this is a valid justification to this paradox. So we'll keep it under the consideration. Next, the pension increase occurred at a time when the number of Runajin aged 65 and older who were living below the poverty line was all at a time high. That is, when we increased the pension, the number of the people was very high. The number of the people below the poverty line was very high, and within these 2 years, it has come to a low, right? So that means now there are less people who are below the poverty line. So this means if there is an increase in the pension, people are now getting more financially stable because now they're moving from below poverty line to above poverty line, which is basically contradicting the given result itself. So we will regard this as an incorrect option. Next, the most recent pension increase was only the second such increase in the last 10 years, which is not at all related to the given point. So we'll regard this as an incorrect option as well. So only the option left is option number C, and we'll mark that as our answer. Let's move to the next question. Please pause the video again and try and find the answer. Now herein, the scenario that has been presented, the argument is that even though it is said that the reason for poor agricultural production is centralized economy, because the climatic conditions in the country X were same as country Y, which has a very good yield of the product. So the agriculture production is nice. So the only reason that we can think about bad production of agricultural products is the centralized economy. And he wants to know that which among the following will weaken this argument. That is, he wants to know that which will justify that no, the reason is not centralized economy but something else. So we'll analyze all the options based on this very thought in our mind. That what could be a possible reason that would say that it is not because of the centralized economy but something else that has led to poor production in the agriculture. So let us take the first argument. It says industrial production is also declining in country X. How is industrial production related to the agricultural production? It is nowhere related, and since it is not related, this is an incorrect argument. It violates the scope. Next, whereas country Y is landlocked, country X has a major seaport. So a major seaport will never supplement or help the agricultural product. So even this becomes an incorrect argument. Country C, both country X and country Y have been experiencing drought conditions. So if there was a drought in both X and Y, so the effect of the drought must be the same. So if there is a bad yield in country X, so must be recorded in country Y. But the question says, or the statement says, that the country Y has been rising. The agricultural production in country Y has risen. So this is contradictory. So this becomes an incorrect argument. Next, the crops that have always been grown in country X are different from those that are grown in country Y. So if country X has certain other crops and country Y has certain other crops, this means that the things needed to develop the yield of these crops would be different from those needed to yield these crops. So this means these two are very different commodities itself. So even if there is an increase noted in the yield of country Y, we cannot comment anything about the yield of country X because they are not related to each other. It's like comparing apples to oranges, right? So we cannot compare these two things. So that means we cannot directly say that it's because of the centralized economy or about something else, because we are comparing on the very bad grounds. We are comparing apples to oranges. So this is a better explanation. So we'll consider it as one of the options, right? E, countries X new government instituted a centralized economy with the intention of ensuring an equitable distribution of goods. If there was an equitable distribution of goods, so the agricultural economy or the agricultural industry must also benefit from it. So there must have been a little benefit, but herein we are saying that there was no benefit, rather it worsened up. So it is again contradicting, it goes incorrect, and the only option left is option number D. So answer becomes option number D. Let's take another example. Please pause the video again, try and answer the question. Now, if I've read the question nicely, I'll find that the argument says that the cost of producing the radios in Q is less than Y, and even after transporting these radios to Y, the cost is even like it does not exceed the cost, right? Because when we transport something, there are tariff charges added, right, or the other barriers etc added to the monetary barriers are added to the cost. But even then the cost of sale, or the cost that comes to country Y is much less than the cost of the production. And he asks that what best supports the assertion that yes, the cost is less in importing rather than making or creating, right? So let us analyze all these options. The first is labor cost in country Q are 10% below those in country Y. So even if the labor cost is low, that does not mean that the transport fee or etc. would not be same. And we are comparing labor cost to something that is not related here, right? So we cannot comment only on the basis of labor cost, because there are the cost of material, cost of packaging, cost of others, so many different costs, right? Cost of fixed cost, variable cost, so many different costs, right? So only if one labor cost is less, that does not mean that the entire cost would get down. So this is an invalid argument. Next, importing radios from country Y to country Q to country Y will eliminate 10% of manufacturing jobs. We are not concerned about jobs, and we cannot compare jobs to the cost. They are not comparable. Since that is not comparable, we again treat it as an invalid argument. Next, the tariff on the radio imported from country Q to country Y is less than 10% of the cost of manufacturing the radio in country Y. That is, now see what exactly is happening. The cost of production plus tariff cost is the total cost to country Y. Right. One thing that is written in the statement itself is that the cost of production is 10% less in country Q. And now in C it is saying that the tariff cost is also 10% less. Since the tariff cost is less and cost of production is less, obviously the total cost in country Y would reduce significantly, right? So this could be a possible explanation to why is this cost less and not equal to what is costs to produce in country Y. So we'll consider it as one of the alternatives. D. It says the fee of transporting a radio from country Q to country Y is more than 10% of cost of manufacturing the radio in country Q. That is, it is saying that the cost, that is, the transport cost is more. If it is more, then the total cost must rise, but the total cost is basically deteriorating. So this is contradicting. So we'll eliminate this as the answer. Last, it takes 10% less time. Now we are not concerned about time, so we'll eliminate this as well, and the answer becomes option number C. Again, I'll explain it to you. It is basically telling you that what is the exact scenario, that the cost of production plus total the transportation cost becomes the total cost in country Y, and the cost of production in X is less than 10%, less by 10%. And it is asking you that why is this total cost less in Y than the cost of production in country Y. right? So only C supports that argument that since the cost of production is less and moreover the cost of transport is also less, so the total cost falls drastically. Let's take another question. It says, again, you can again pause the video and try and find the answer. Now, if you've understood the argument correctly, the argument states that the average weight of any newborn or any infant is 12 to 14 pounds in the this age bracket, especially, right? The infant age bracket, the average weight in the US is 12 to 14 pounds. And if a baby comes out, that is a 3-month-old baby comes out with the weight of 10 pounds, so we say that his average weight gain is very low. What are we doing is, where is the flaw? That we say the average weight is 10 to 12 pounds, 12 to 14 pounds. And we are considering the weight gain of a baby, that is how much weight is he gaining, weight is it gaining in certain amount of time. So that means, supposingly, if today that is a 3-month-old baby weighs 10 pounds and its weight gain is 2 pounds per month. So when it becomes 4 months, it will turn 12. 5 months, it will again become 14 and it may come into the correct weight bracket. Right? So weight gain is being compared to the average weight. Average weight is the total weight of all babies, the correct total weight of all babies over the number of babies, right? This is what the formula of average says, right? And herein we are discussing the weight gain. That is, supposedly the baby is gaining 1 pound in the first month. Today, like for the first month, 1 month, the baby weighs 7 pounds. Second month it weighs 8 pounds. Third month it weighs 10 pounds. Fourth month it weighs, let us say, 12 pounds. What would be the average weight gain? We'll add all of them and then divide it by 4. That is how much weight on an average basis is it gaining per month. And herein we are comparing the average weight of the entire population. So we are comparing two different things. So the flaw is that we are comparing apples to the oranges. That is, we are comparing average weight to weight gain. And what is the flaw? Which is explicitly mentioned, I guess, in the point number E. So my answer becomes point number E. We'll discuss the other options as well. Weight is only one measure. We are not concerned about the other measure. It goes incorrect. Some 3-month-old children weigh as much as 17 pounds. But herein again, weight gain is being compared. So this goes incorrect again. It is possible for a normal child to weigh 10 pounds at a birth, but the average weight is 12 to 14, so it cannot be normal. So it goes incorrect again. The phrase below average does not necessarily mean insufficient. If it is below average, that is, it is below the threshold, so it is insufficient. So it goes incorrect again. So the only option left is option number E. Well, that gets us to the end of the discussion of these questions. I'll just advise you to practice as many questions as you can, because this is a very important topic for any entrance test examination. If you've not understood any question, you can again do this entire video or that part of the question, so as you get a better understanding. Thank you and have a nice day.